This video is for how to help somebody who says that they can't meditate. And I don't mean that sarcastically. It's just that many of us have heard that someone saying that they can't meditate, that when they close their eyes, thoughts are just running around, that they can't empty their mind, they can't get it to a place of nothingness. Well, in order to, first assist this person, we need to get on the same page as to what meditation is, the purpose of meditation, and then the approach for the meditation. And to start, there's many ways we can define meditation, but one that can be kind of universally stated is the deliberate use of mental energy. And deliberate is important because just because we have thoughts running in our mind doesn't mean we're meditating. And then to break that down, and we'll get into thoughts coming to the mind in a moment, but to break that down even further, we then can see that there are two forms of meditation, generally speaking. There's active and passive. There's directing the mind and opening the mind, kind of deliberate use of focusing on something, concentrating, or just sitting back, being aware, having that open awareness. You may hear the idea of just be aware of your thoughts. And then you may have heard the type of meditation where it's focus on something, whether it's focus on a flame, focus on your breath, focus on the dripping of a faucet, focus on the air condition. There's a focus aspect and a relaxation and awareness aspect of meditation. So if one just begins to jump into the awareness, and that's what they're told, to just quiet your mind, which first of all, what does that even mean? Because we are built to think. Our brains want to work. They want to function. They want to use its mental capabilities. And if we are just going into open awareness without any other formal training, then we're just going to be bombarded with the thoughts. We're going to have all the grocery lists of to-do items that are on our plate that are already just floating around in our mind. So it is valuable to have the concentration aspect, and this is why many traditions have this concentration component of meditation, to focus on something. And many of them suggest the breath because you can always focus on your breath. You are always breathing so long as you are alive in this body. And what does that mean, focus on the breath? So we could start with, what does it feel like as it enters your nostrils? What does it feel like as your lungs expand and contract? What does it feel like as the air enters your lungs? Can you feel it in the back of your throat as it passes through? So it's just honing in that concentration aspect. So, and then if thoughts arise, and as they may, it's just, all right, back to the breath, back to the breath. So then we have an anchor, something to focus on. And if your eyes want to be open, maybe it's focus on a dot on the wall. You can just choose something and say, I'm going to focus on this. And if thoughts come arise, back to the dot, back to the dot. There's traditions that suggest focus on a flame. And if thoughts come in, just back to the flame, back to the flame. And even the notion of counting sheep before you go to sleep is a form of meditation. It allows us to concentrate on the sheep, concentrate on the counting so that there's no room for other thoughts. Focus on the sheep, focus on the sheep. This is also where mantras come into play in different traditions, having that anchor, so to speak, so that there is no room for anything else. And then so we recognize if thoughts do arise, okay, back to the mantra, back to the sheep, back to the dot on the wall, back to the breath, whatever it is, having that form of concentration kind of pushes away because it narrows in our focus. So then it's like, all right, this is what I have to focus on. This is it. And then it allows that awareness to work in a more efficient manner because, again, if it's anything outside of this realm of focus, we can then bring back to the point of concentration. So that is often and it depends on the individual, but that is often a far more valuable form of meditation for beginners because, again, if you just sit and try to empty your mind to nothing, what does that mean? So having that form of focus and then transitioning into awareness. So once that focus is locked in, you can sense that there's a calming of the mind. Then you can let go and be aware. It's like, okay, what does my presence feel like? And just allow, and there's still, you could say, a form of concentration, but it's expansive, it's more open, it's allowing your receptivity to be heightened. So it's not just narrowed in, it's open and allowing spaciousness to enter your mind. And because of that concentration, and it's not just what is currently floating on your mind, you're able to, in a way, more separate, more kind of stepped back and witnessing those thoughts, those ideas as they float into the mind, or just observing the area you're in. If you're outdoors, for example, just the awareness of the senses. It's like perhaps you hear the trees blowing, perhaps you feel the wind on your skin, perhaps you feel the sunshine, perhaps you just notice the density of the rocks that you're sitting on. So different forms of awareness, but again, there's an aspect of concentration that's still in there. And why this is important is because we need the balance, the duality of the two, having that the active and the passive, and you could say the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang of everything. There needs to be that duality. And if we just try to jump into one and forget the other, then we are lacking in our truest form of meditation and deepening our practice. And then beyond that, just to add, we can't just have the concentration. Of course, that'll help us develop our focus. And then what that concentration still carries on beyond the meditation. Because as we train our brains to say, all right, I'm focusing on this, I'm focusing on this, then when we are in the presence of another and having a conversation, we are honing in our focus and saying, this is what I'm focusing on. I'm not going to let those distractions. I'm focused on you right now. And we can train our brain to disregard anything unimportant, and we choose what we focus on. But again, I wanted to add in that concentration practices alone may be detrimental, because we still need to have that space for receptivity, for openness, for that awareness to allow our consciousness to expand what it naturally wants to do. So that's that, and how I'd suggest in a kind of a quick way to assist one that may say they can't meditate. I would first ask what they've done and what they say their purpose is with their meditation. And if they say to have nothing, and let's try to redirect that. What if we start with focusing on something so that in that focus, we rid our mind of other thoughts and we just have one sole focal point, one pointedness of mind. And then from there, we can determine if we want to transition to that spaciousness. Because we may strangely find that as we focus on one thing, as we narrow in, we simultaneously expand. It's strange and perhaps paradoxical, but you may find it to be true. So I hope this helps you. Perhaps you can pass that on to someone else if it does help them as well, if you think it may. So that's that. Until next time, cheers.